Hello and welcome to episode 57 of our SAP on Azure Video Podcast. Today is September 2nd, and together with Goran and Robert, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So today we are going to try to do something slightly different. In the last 50 or so episodes, we have talked a lot about technology. We've shown how you can run SAP on Azure, how you can extend SAP on Azure. But actually, when you look at running your SAP system on Azure, there's so much more than technology. I think one topic where you can really see the power of SAP on Azure is our internal community here at Microsoft. So across the world, we have colleagues working with lots of different topics, helping our customers and partners. And these colleagues come from lots of different backgrounds. And we have a really good internal exchange when it comes to questions. So when I have a question, I just ask a question in our internal community, and there's somewhere across the world who knows how to answer this. So starting today, what we want to do in a few episodes from time to time is to invite a few colleagues, ask them to share their story, let them talk about their hobbies or what they are doing at Microsoft and so on. And today we'll actually start with Nishan, who joins us from South Africa. But as always, before we go to him, before we hand over to him, let's quickly take a look at some of the news from this week. And actually, what I want to start with is this Powerful Devs conference. So as the name already implies, this is all about the Power Platform. And there's actually some really cool speakers already lined up. So Scott Guthrie will kick off the keynote. And then throughout the day, you have really some fantastic experts that I think we already mentioned to some extent in our podcast before. Then the end here will also be done by Charles and Amanda Silver. So there's really a lot of fantastic content there, and I think it's a nice quick event that's certainly worth watching if you are interested in the Power Platform. Another, not a blog post, but an entry in the GitHub repository that was just published today. So I think we had previously talked about a blog post from Martin Pankratz, who talked about how to use the Azure Traffic Manager in combination with the Business Technology Platform, with the SAP Technology Platform. And now what Max Streifeneder did is he created this repository with a lot of content, with a lot of steps how you can actually get started, how you can do this. Obviously, there are some requirements. You need the BTP and stuff like that. But it's a really nice introduction of how you can use the Azure Traffic Manager in combination with different business technology platforms, so that in a disaster recovery scenario, you can fail over, for example, here from West Europe, running the business technology platform, to West US, for example. So I did not have time yet, obviously, to test it out myself, to follow all the steps here. But I think if you know Max, then you know this is also, again, a lot of high quality content. So be sure to check this out. The next thing is an entry or an addition to Logic Apps. So our colleague David Berg, who's obviously very, very active in Logic Apps and the SAP connector, he has posted some news that with the latest on-premises data gateway. So remember, if you're using Logic Apps and if you want to use the SAP ERP connector to connect to your SAP system that sits behind a firewall, then very similar like SAP has the SAP Cloud Connector to connect to the Business Technology Platform. On the Azure side, we have the on-premises data gateway that allows you to connect to Azure services. And now there were some enhancements with the on-premises data gateway with the latest release that gives you even better insights in what is happening when you're using the SAP connector. So all the telemetry information can be sent to application insights, and then obviously with this you can really drill down and see what's happening. So one last thing that we quickly talked about also last week with the Codespaces functionality in Azure and in GitHub. There's a nice quick blog post by Donovan Brown. The title is Codespaces meets Dapr, but actually what I loved about this one, it outlines how you can use Codespaces and how you can actually extend the Codespaces. So obviously when you start the first time, it's a blank, it's a default Codespaces. So this Visual Studio in your browser. But Donovan outlines how you can extend the Codespaces. So once you start it, that you can actually run scripts and install additional functionalities or install additional environments. And I mean, he obviously talks here about installing Dapr and making sure that you can run Dapr in Codespaces. But in general, I thought it was interesting to see what you need to do. So for example, here he's installing the REST client in Codespace and so on. So what you need to do to customize your own Codespace environment. So remember, we had talked about how the GitHub team themselves, how they switched to Codespaces and how they customize their environment. And this is a very, very simplified view basically on what you would need to do to customize your Codespace environment and to make it really specific with the tools and features that you need in Codespaces. So I think that's, yeah, check it out. I think that's...
You mentioned Dapr, so I send you the link. You can just open another link. So let's show that we are really interactive.
Yeah.
So this is actually Dan Brown again. So he's actually announcing DaprCon. So this is a virtual community. So I give you the link. So we'll also post that link later. So this is for people who like Dapr. So this is the first big community conference, let's call it like that. And I think it's should be probably very interesting to see what we have so far there and what we are planning to have there, because Dapr is very nice. I like it.
Absolutely, and thank you. That's really great. And I have not used Dapr myself, but yeah, obviously there were a lot of announcements. I think we even talked about this in the past. So yeah, that's certainly interesting to watch as well. Cool. Good. With this, let's actually switch over and yeah, let's go to Nishan. Nishan, as mentioned, you are the first one who really yeah, who we want to feature as one person in the huge SAP on Azure community that we have here at Microsoft. So maybe you can quickly introduce yourself and then yeah, tell a little about the journey. How did you end up at Microsoft? Where were you before, and so on. So over to you, Nishan.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Holger, and thank you, Robert, as well. I really do appreciate the invite. I'm really privileged and honored, especially to be the first person in the community, as you say, to do this presentation and demonstration. I must say that I'm a huge follower and a huge fan of your podcasts that you guys are doing, and it's a tremendous work, and I'm always learning. So imagine all the other people out there that's also learning from this. So thank you very much for that. I do appreciate that. So introduction, I have it all as part of my slides, so just let me share it quickly. This should just take a second. Okay, so let's just kick off from here, right? What you see here is a beautiful picture of Cape Town in South Africa. So I am actually based in Johannesburg, South Africa, but Cape Town is known for, you know, a very touristic type of place. A lot of people like to go there, and you can see why just by looking at this image. So it's just beautiful and just so calming, right? A little bit about myself. I work for Microsoft right now. In the past, I've worked for Workday, and a huge chunk of my career was at SAP, right? So what did I do at each of these companies? Right now at Microsoft, I'm a cloud solution architect. And I've only started about 7 months ago, but it does feel like a long time. And that's purely because I'm so involved, I'm so busy, and I'm really passionate about what I do. So at Workday, I was doing some enterprise architect type of work. So as you can realize from so far, I'm a very technical type of person, and I love the architecture type of work. At SAP, I was playing several roles, Basis, NetWeaver, and pre-sales. Pretty much a large chunk of my career was at SAP. And I think if I actually really think about it, it's now almost 16 and a half years of SAP experience. I love it so much that I want to continue with that experience and start to use it in my current Microsoft career, where I'm actually a cloud solution architect. I'll speak to you a little bit more of how my past actually is relevant for my current role and how it actually makes a lot of sense and where the value is extracted. So in terms of the, moving forward, in what I would like to do in the next few minutes is really talk to you about my past, what I used to do, and how things are done now, especially in the Azure world. And by doing that, I would like to focus on some key areas, right? So the first area I would like to talk about is really around SAP Installations. The second area is around backups. And the last area, which I'm closely passionate about, and I know Holger is also quite passionate about this, is really around the integration between SAP and Power Apps. So there'll be a few slides, and then thereafter there will be more demos type of things, right, moving forward. So I want to just show you here a little bit of a fun fact, just to break the ice a bit. Whenever I'm just not working, when I have some spare time, I like to spend a lot of this time with my family. I love my family. And also this is Peaches. She's actually part of my family. So I spend a lot of quality time with her. She just kind of puts that smile on my face whenever you just need to break the ice.
I'm jealous when I see such picture because my dog is 40 kilos. I cannot just bring him in.
Wow. Yeah, I know what you mean. So let's just go back, right? So Basis. I mean, I've been in Basis for a very long time, right? So if you can recall, and especially the Basis guys right now that are watching this, in the early days during R3, release 3, that's where the name Basis came from. So Basis is essentially the technical layer of the SAP system. So everything technical around the foundation of the SAP system is Basis. So as the SAP systems evolved over a period of time, the Basis component is still part of that evolution moving forward. So Basis is also associated with ABAP programming. So a lot of the SAP Basis people, they know ABAP quite well, although at some point in time, they kind of drift away from ABAP and they leave it to the ABAP developers, right? And as time evolved, SAP released NetWeaver, which is essentially the platform on which all SAP applications live on, right? But NetWeaver is more associated with the Java application part of SAP. So you get the ABAP, and then you get the Java side. And if you look now, I mean, a lot of Basis guys would love the screen because you spend a lot of time here. So when you do things such as support package upgrades or announcement package upgrades, this is a very common screen, transaction spam, that you would go in and you go and update this. So you can see this is Basis as well. So even up to now, Basis guys are not called NetWeaver consultants so much. They're actually called Basis because there's a bit of a history behind that. So some may ask, what does a Basis person do, right? So these are the typical type of things that they would do. They would actually log tickets through OSS whenever they're trying to resolve some sort of production errors. They would actually look at monitoring. A huge chunk of their time is really spent around monitoring their SAP landscapes, being ECC, BW, CRM, PI, or NetWeaver. These are just some examples. And then with Solution Manager being a pivotal part of the landscape from a monitoring perspective, a lot of these type of manual activities that they used to do in the past has now been automated and integrated into Solution Manager. So apart from just doing all of these fun stuff, they also do the most important things, which is installations, right? I remember in the past, whenever I needed to do an installation, I needed to download an installation guide from the SAP CAL portal, right? So I'll just type in there what type of installation I want. Maybe it's, installation of maybe SAP ERP on DB2 or running ARX or something like that, and I'll type it in there. And then obviously now that I have my installation guide, which is about, a long, book, so to speak, a couple of 100 pages to follow, I would still need to procure the hardware, right? So I would contact a vendor. I'll use the SAP Quick Sizer tool just to calculate the steps, send it out to the vendor, and then we'll ship the relevant hardware required for the installation based on the installation guide. And I'm actually showing my age right now. But if you think about those days when we used to do installations, we also needed to order these DVDs, right? So I remember clearly the DVDs used to be shipped in this white box. And in this white box, it had like CD numbers, and you matched that when you're actually doing the actual installations itself. So you could imagine, right? A lot of these things in the past took a lot of time and effort, right, to do simple installations. It's sandbox installations, development, quality, QA, production, and so on. Things have changed quite a bit, right? So right now in Azure, this is how we are doing installations. It's much, much more simpler. We actually have a lot of images that you can start using just to get the infrastructure in place. So you don't have to wait days and days just to get, to receive the hardware or to receive the actual software and so on. We do a lot of the simplification inside Azure already. And there's a lot of automation that not only comes from the infrastructure itself, but also automation that comes from the actual SAP application side. So another thing that we also have is the Cloud Access Library, which you may already be quite familiar with. We can now actually deploy an instance which is pre-configured, like an S/4HANA instance, and deploy that directly into Azure, right? I'll show you shortly how simple it is just to get that in there. And you can see here, there's a lot of trial versions in there, but this is provided in case you want to just go and test to see what S4 is all about, and also to actually go and test it in Azure to see how flexible and agile it is there to manage S4. And in terms of, automation, and I know in the past there were podcasts around the SAP deployment automation framework. I really truly believe in this. In terms of my experience doing a lot of manual stuff, I really believe that the quicker you do things and the more accurately you do things, the more time you save at the end of the day. So what I would like to show you very quickly.
I have one question, because you explained very nicely this past. Some of us maybe don't want to remember all that stuff, but it was pain, yeah. But you probably notice. You also make transition to Azure. So what is your opinion? In my what I have seen that many times SAP Basis guys make a step back. They are afraid of these changes in the cloud. What do you think that SAP Basis guys will have new roles, or maybe they will have extension of the role in the cloud, because now they don't need to order hardware. They can provision hardware by themselves. They don't need to wait IT to approve that. What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. In fact, I'm glad that you're asking that question. I was actually speaking to a few of my Basis colleagues recently who is actually still supporting on-prem world. And, their companies are thinking of moving to the cloud. And they are actually more excited than me right now, right? Some of them here are a little bit pedantic. It's like, hey, you know what, do I still have a job? And other people are like, hey, you know what, that's exciting. Because I believe now, by taking away this manual repetitive tasks that I'm busy with in the on-prem world and moving into the cloud and automating that, it helps me to focus my time and energy on other things that are equally more important, right? So equally more important in terms of making sure that they have the right, like for example, the automation framework is a perfect example, right? They're automating all these tasks, but it's a new skill set that they have right now. So what they are saying is, to the latter part of your response, it's an extension of my career. It is much better now in terms of what I'm learning, right? I'm able to automate things. I'm able to do things easier in the cloud. I'm able to also look at new initiatives in terms of innovation, right? Well-architected framework, landing zones, all of these type of things they've never known before, but makes a lot of sense for them. So to answer your question, Robert, it just takes their career to another level altogether. And there's huge excitement out there from my perspective and my connections that I have in the Basis world. So if we look at, how do you actually do installations, just focusing on the installations right now, right? If you look into docs.microsoft.com, you can do installations of SAP HANA on VMs. Instead of following those long guides that we had before, it's much more simplified right now, right? So over here, you have like step-by-step before deploying. You can go through this, operating system considerations. Let's assume that you're deploying a SLES environment, 15 SP2 or whatever. There's a lot of notes that you can go through here, apply the latest patches. I feel it's easier for me to go through this than a long installation guide that we used to do in the past. So I feel this is making my life much easier as a Basis person. So that's just one example. And if I go in here and you see that SAP has also got basically certification for the infrastructure you choose, like for example, you can see there's a whole list of them here. So let's say that you've done some sort of sizing and you want to go and see like this M series, if it's certified, you can just do a search here and you can see that it is certified. Although at the same time, it'll be in the SAP notes as well, right? Additionally, what I really like, which I think is very cool, is as you start preparing your environment from an infrastructure perspective, you need to make sure you get a few things right, such as your storage, right? So here we have some really cool information around storage, write accelerator, and I think what's more important I want to talk about is really around recommended storage for production, for example. You have the option to use the premium storage disks. You can choose, there's enough information in terms of telling you, based on the M series that you have, what's the throughput that you have, IOPS. I think this is very useful. It's just making life easier in terms of how you set up your environment. Now, how do you actually do this, right? So I would go, for example, let's say that I want to create a VM, right? So it's as simple as clicking that. And all of these things just happen in a matter of a few minutes, right? Which is really, really cool. I'll specify my resource group here, the virtual machine name. And what I want to show you more importantly is the marketplace in terms of the SAP images that we have. So here I'll do a quick search on SAP and you can see here there's lots of images that you can start leveraging off, right? And this comes already with pre-configured operating system patches and things like that. In some cases, you may need to actually go in and after you actually set up the environment, you may still need to go in and do your SAP tune and SAP conf just to get things up and running. But already this is saving you so much of time. It is really unbelievable, right? So just to give you an idea, earlier on, I deployed a M series, M64 MS, right? So you can just see, I think it literally took me for this 64 virtual CPUs and that memory, virtually took me 10 to 12 minutes to deploy this. And this is what I deployed, a SLES 15x2. This was the OS disk that I had. You can add additional disks if you want. So let's have a look at the quick disks. So here you can see the disks that you have here. You can set up your encryption as well here, right? Your host caching. I think this is just phenomenal based on my past experience in the world of doing manual stuff.
But still, you need to read SAP notes.
There are some. That is very important, though. The SAP notes is definitely the guidance to doing the things the right way moving forward as well. Absolutely. You still need to follow the SAP notes. But I do believe, though, Robert, based on what we have in Azure in terms of reducing the time to actually deploy a VM in a matter of a few minutes, as compared to waiting days and days to get that with the installations, this is just phenomenal for me. It's a wow thing for me.
And I think this exactly, that point what you mentioned is also very difficult to not explain, to sell to customers, because they don't understand. They're always mapping to what I have on premise, what I will have in the cloud in Azure, but they forget about all those simplicities and those scalability options we have in cloud. And I think it's very crucial that SAP Basis guys like this big knowledge base what we have, simply learn how to do it in cloud, and they can just extend their knowledge and actually continue to use to do classical SAP Basis configuration operations like on premise.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I think the way things are moving right now, there's a mind shift in terms of working in the cloud, right? And I do believe, with me being a basis person, I do believe that my mind has shifted already, and I think that most people will move towards that mind shift as well, to do things differently in the better way. Another thing I want to spend a few minutes on is just talking to you about the Cloud Access Library, right? So with the Cloud Access Library, you have pre-configured, SAP provides pre-configured solutions already. So just to give you an idea, here are all the Azure pre-configured solutions. These are all the trial versions. There are a couple of dev versions in here. And, for example, if you would like to know, and you just want to play around and understand more about S/4HANA, and you want to quickly deploy it in Azure, you can actually easily do this by just creating an instance, right? So you can go in here. The first thing you would need to do is create an account, a new account. I did that already. So therefore, this was my account. So therefore, I can go in and create many instances under the account. But when you create a new account, you'll have the account available. There would be some steps that you need to do when you create the account. You would need to actually authorize your Azure subscription to actually link up with the CAL instance that you're deploying, so it understands who you are. So this is few things that you need to do there. But what I did was I recently just deployed this S/4HANA instance. I'll just show you quickly what it looks like. So I deployed this instance. And I think it just kind of, I started it like a night before, and it took like probably about 2 hours to deploy this instance directly into my Azure subscription. And, obviously you've got all the IP addresses here. You've got the get starting guide where you can go in and look at the logon details. When you deploy this instance, it will deploy, based on these VM sizes. So, and then you obviously have your different settings. So let me show you quickly how I've deployed, or let me just show you how it appears here in Azure. So I'll just quickly go into my resource groups. And this is the one I want to show you. So you can see here, it's just deployed all of these resources into Azure, which is very cool. I can manage it directly from here where I start my VMs, or I can do it directly from the CAL. So over here, I have a Windows VM as well. And what was cool is I'll just pull up that VM. So here's the Windows VM that I have here. And in this Windows VM, you have the ability to log on to the SAP system. You have SAP HANA Studio, you have your MMC. What I did was I quickly connected to the SAP system, and then I've got that. So I'll just show you quickly that you can just execute some basis transactions here, like system logs, quickly, 3.
And the beautiful thing, it's really all pre-configured. So
yeah. With demo data.
With demo data. So it's not even a fresh system, a clean system where you cannot do anything, but you really have business processes configured and all this kind of stuff. And across the board. So S4 and lots of other solutions are available. That's really powerful. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, Holger. It's really powerful, and it's not too difficult to do as well, right? So here's some apps here. And there's a reason why I actually deployed this, which I'll come back to you a little later. But let's just quickly go into one more important thing, which is really around the GitHub stuff, right? So the automation I was talking about earlier. I also kind of, I was very curious, so I said, I'm going to go and test this, right? And this is the automated, I know there's been a few podcasts around this earlier as well. And, I started going in here and, I copied this directory as it says directly to my root. There's different ways that you could do this. You could use Linux. And just to give you an idea, right, of the tools that you can use the Cloud Shell, which is over here, right? So I'll just connect to that. So it'll come up very shortly. Or additionally, if you really want to deploy, you can use WSL, which is Windows Subsystem Linux, right? Or what I found also quite useful was Visual Studio Code, right? So I started using this just for the I used a Cloud Shell to actually go and deploy the infrastructure. And then as soon as I got my deployment VM, I can actually use the deployment VM, or alternatively, I can use this. So whichever you're comfortable with. So the point is that there's so much of agility and flexibility by using this automation is that, it depends on where you're comfortable, what you're comfortable with using altogether. So these are the different options. But more importantly, the automation that's available here is just phenomenal, right? It's mind-blowing because imagine if you had to actually go and deploy all these resources step by step manually, which you can do right now as well. But we just further. If you look at, you first prepare the region, so you deploy the workload zones. You can remove the workload zones, and then lastly the SAP system. So not only deploying the infrastructure, but you're also automating the configuration of the application itself. Mm-hmm. So I really, really enjoyed this, and it was a good experience for me. And I hope you guys test drive this as well, from that perspective. So let's go back to the slides. Let's get this going here. Just give me a second. Okay, here we go. So another thing that I was really passionate about, and I still am passionate about, are backups. Okay. Most of you may relate to this, right? So these are backup tapes, LGO tapes. And I remember the days, one of my jobs as a basis guy was to kind of go in and change the tapes on a daily basis. So go into the tape library in the server room, and we used to have daily backups for SAP, weekly backups, monthly and yearly. So every day after the backup runs overnight, I go in the morning and then change the tapes. And then at the end of the week, I remember clearly, there was this external company we used to use. Yeah, exactly. Come and pick up those tapes. And even more hassles, because now you needed to match these label numbers that you see on the tapes and document that, because you need to know what tapes are going out, what's coming back, tapes get overwritten. When you run out of storage space, you buy more tapes. You can imagine, right? I don't need to explain too much around that. So the way things are done now with using Azure Backups is fundamentally different, right? And with the automation that's available in there, you don't need to worry about backup tapes anymore. You don't need to worry about infrastructure so much in terms of tape libraries and where you actually go and save the data for these tapes, right? So give you an idea, let me just show you. I would go into something called Backup Center. Show you what we have here. And in the Backup Center, you would see that I have the ability to go in and create backup policies. I can go and monitor my backups that I have. So on your left here, you'd see backup instances. I can go define backup policies. I can go and monitor backup jobs. I can look at the different alerts. I can also go in and see what what I have configured as part of my backups. And each of these backups would be linked to obviously a vault. So the recovery services vault is essentially where your backup data gets stored, and you would need a storage account for that. It's simple as that, right? So you monitor these backups, and then you can do a number of things with these backups. From an SAP perspective, you can also go and backup. You can restore files if you want, but we also have different ways in which you would do backups for SAP environments. Okay, so give me an idea. Let me go in here. Here you would see, for example, using Azure VM backup with SAP HANA backup. Now, in Azure, you have the ability to actually go and back up your operating system VM with non-database files, right? So that's one backup running. And then you also have the opportunity to go in and run an SAP HANA backup, right? Where you actually doing the database backup and recovery. So you have two. Now I want to give you, I want to tell you a story about a customer that I was working with in the past, and they were very cost conscious. So they wanted to, they came to me and they really asked, like, you know, how can we save money, but at the same time manage any risks associated if we had to change our backup architecture. So we had a look at this backup architecture. And we said, okay, right now you're running two different backups because they also had ASR, right? Azure Site Recovery. They were backing up there already, so they had 3 copies there, and then they had 3 copies using availability zones as well. So they had but more importantly, they were trying to save money altogether. And we said, okay, what I can see right now in your backups is that in your VM backup, you actually not only backing up the operating system, but you're also backing up all the SAP HANA data files, including your log files, right? So which means that you're getting a full backup already using that VM backup. And then you also got your SAP HANA backup running with backup int on its own. What about this option of configuring your backup, okay, where you use the selective disk backup and restore, right? So in this case, what you can do, you can, for example, say, tell Azure that you only want to back up the OS disk, right? And then exclude the other disks from that operating system backup, right? And in that way, you're saving money on your disk because you're not copying unnecessary backup data to your recovery vault. So the whole point here is that there is so much agility and flexibility in looking for things, in doing things in Azure itself, especially around this capability that we have here already. So they were very excited about that. And obviously after that, we started to test that as well to see if the restores are working, and it was all working hunky-dory.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Just quickly going back to this thing that you had this external company picking up the disk and everything. I mean, here it's just a click away, and you can decide whether you want to make the backup in another geopolitical region, whether you want to do the backup in another continent or something like that. And it's just a click, and that's it. So yeah, it's really a really powerful solution there.
Yeah, 100% agree with you, Holger. I mean, as you said, it's just a click, and what could be better than that, right? I mean, there's so much excitement from the Basis team that manages backups. This makes their life much easier, for sure. All right, so just on the last topic that I would like to talk to you about is really around building apps, right? In my past, I kind of stayed away from this area, to be really honest. I left it for the gurus or the guys the experts that really knew stuff like JavaScripting, HTML, CSS, and all of these crazy stuff that they needed to do to actually build apps. And that required a lot of knowledge and skill set and coding. So I stayed away from that, and I just focused on what I knew, right? Nowadays, with SAP and Power Platform, it's just fundamentally changed the way we do things, right? I don't really believe that you need to have all of these additional skill sets, these additional coding capabilities to go in and build a simple app, or even slightly more complex, because Power Apps just makes it much more easier to do things. So what's even better is that business people that are not technical are able to go in and build a simple Power App with a simple Power Automate and see huge benefit from that. So I think also with my basis experience and understanding SAP processes that well, I can see significant value in bringing these two together, right? The SAP processes and the optimization capabilities that you have in Power Platform. So based on that, there are two connectors that we would normally use here, right? Just want to talk a little bit about these connectors. There's the SAP ERP connector. So with the ERP connector, you would essentially use this whenever you need to call a BAPI or a custom RFC and invoke that, right? What you would normally do is use an on-premise data gateway for that. You can deploy this gateway in an available VM or maybe in a tenant or so. And that will give you the ability to actually call that SAP system, that backend system that you need to call. Now, let's say, for example, that you are more familiar with OData and you would prefer to use OData, or maybe for that specific business scenario, it would make sense to actually use a custom connector calling an OData API. There are several ways. People have different preferences and also different business scenarios. Such as a sales order, for example, it's easier to call an OData API, then you can do that. In my demonstration, I'm going to be using a custom connector calling an OData API specifically for a sales process. So let me explain before I just jump into the actual demo. So here, this is based on a real life customer scenario, right? So someone in the field, a customer, needs a change in a sales order. So maybe he or she wants to just maybe order more antivirus packages or software packages or whatever, right? So he or she will either call the sales representative, and then the sales representative, the next step would be to actually go into her PC or laptop, log a ticket, because she has access to nothing right now. She just logs a ticket, and that goes to a different team, and that MDM team will okay, so what do I do now? I would log into the SAP system, and then there's insufficient data, and then that goes all the way back. The reply in the ticket, the query is received, and it goes back to that field person, the customer, and already it's up and down altogether. So he's not getting the right answer. Now, if we look at how much value you would have if you have the integration of SAP and Power Platform in place. So you'll have the sales order as a change request. This can actually be sent either via an email or maybe a call to the sales representative. That sales representative will have access to the Power Apps, the Canvas app itself, where she can go in and make the change immediately, right? So using Power Platform or the connector in the backend, all of this is automated. So that change is actually immediately using the custom connector, using change line item and also using the line item sales order from the word connector. That information is then passed through. Whatever change is made is passed through back to the customer quite easily. And you can see already the steps are reduced significantly, and there's less complications with the whole process. So let me show you how cool it is now, if you actually go into Power Apps. And personally, I must tell you a little story here as well. As I said, I was not good in coding and stuff, but I started playing around with Power Apps a lot, and it has made things much clearer for me in terms of how easy it is to use. So I built a lot of apps. So you can build apps from Canvas apps from scratch, or you can actually maybe want to build a little slightly more complex apps. Then that will be more model-driven apps, or you want to build a portal from scratch directly, right, using this platform. And you can use many types of data sources that you have here. There's lots and lots of data sources that you can use. Very easy to use, very flexible. So let's just quickly show you. In terms of the demonstration I want to show you now, I had to create a few connections in here. So, and all of these connections will play a role in that sales flow, the sales order process flow I showed you already. So here we have an approvals. Here we have a basically Office 365 Outlook, which is going to push that email back to the customer or the field service guy. Here we have Office 365. This is where I had to store some documents and so on. Over here, these two are just the actual ERP connectors that you would use when you want to connect to the backend system to call a BAPI or a custom RFC. Okay, so this is still using the on-premises data gateway. I will not be using this for the demo, but the flexibility is here if you want to use this, right? And then this, obviously, a few other connectors are over here. So let's say, for example, you want to go and see what connectors are available. You can go in here and you see there's a whole list. I can't even count. I think there's more than 500 or so connectors, maybe mistaken. But there's a whole list of connectors that's available here. And it makes life just much more simpler for you. Now, I've also installed the gateway just to show you. So the gateway, if you want to actually go in and start looking at calling a BAPI, for example, in the backend system, you can install the gateway over here. I actually just want to show you quickly. So over here, there's a few things. There's a connector that you would install over here. And after you install the connector, there's a .NET framework that you install, and the gateway needs to be deployed in a separate VM altogether. So I installed the gateway here, and that will connect to that backend system that I showed you already. But the real purpose is to show you the custom connector, which I've imported already. Now, this custom connector is an SAP OData connector. This connector is also, by the way, available on GitHub. You'll see here there's a sample connector here. It gives you enough information on how to deploy and what it does and so on. So very useful if you can check this out. However, just to give you an idea, so this connector is actually linked to a publicly available SAP ES5 system, right? So what's happening here is that in my demonstration, I'm going to use this connector to call an OData API, right? That's sitting in this ES5 system, which is this system here that's publicly available for you, right? So it's just a very simple demonstration. But in terms of what this connector can do for you, you can have a look here. These are the things that the connector can do. It's listing the products, adding the products, get products, and there's a whole list of them that's available for you here. All right. So let's drill down a little bit in terms of looking at the actual flow itself, right? So I would go in here, and I just want to give you a quick look in. Let's see here. You see over here, this is the SAP demo, and there's a number of flows that you have here. If I go in there, you'll see a few flows that's in there, but I want to actually go into the SAP line items because this is more relevant for the demonstration. And just to give you an idea in terms of how this is set up, right? And more importantly, how easy it is to actually go and change things if you need to, right? Because that's always a big hassle when you're actually doing coding, right? So it just takes a few seconds, but we'll get there now. So here you can see that we have the Power Apps. So when the Power Apps is triggered, it will pass line items using JSON. These line items will go into a list, and then it'll populate a Word template. So what I did was I specified a SharePoint. So there's a document stored in that SharePoint that I want to update. Or if I want to create a new file, I can create a new file in there. I can also additionally take that file and convert it into a PDF. And then lastly, I can send an email, right, to trigger a notification. I think this is really cool because if you think about it, there's always a need for workflow automation. It's a common thing, the workflow automation stuff, right? So look at how easy it is just to automate here, just by using this Power Automate that you have available and specifying an email address that's available here. Now, all of these workflows, let's say these Power Automate, is actually, some of them are actually linked to the connectors that I showed you previously. Are there any questions before I move forward?
No, makes sense. Just in this Power Automate flow, there's currently no call to SAP, right? This is just creating the Word document, creating the PDF document, and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So if I go in here, and this is actually now using the custom connector and calling SAP, right? So if I go into the Canvas app, I can see here that obviously these are the different things that it pulls in, the different connectors and the data. But if I want to, for example, simply just include a button, right? You can see already, I mean, that's cool, right? So I just inserted a button just in a matter of a few seconds, and I can start changing this if I want. But let's, very simply, let's say that I want to go in and test this now to make sure that the connector is working. Now I have over here the data that I can see that's been called, that's calling the ES5 system. It's called the ES5 system, and now I want to change this. So let's say I want to change this Internet Antivirus package from 4 to 40, right? Change that. And you can see those things moving there, right? So what's happening is that now it's actually using the connector. I want to actually send that notification, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if you recall that notification, this email that I specified here, right? So I can change this email as well in terms of who it sends the notification to. But right now it's sending the notification, and you heard that noise. So I go into the email that I specified. And here we go. So just to show you that it's changed as well, you can see now that Smart Antivirus is 40, right? So which means it's accurately picking up the right data based on the actual flow itself.
Cool.
So I think that's really, really cool. And yeah, I mean, then I end with the big 5, because this is a very nice picture of what South Africa is all about. Yeah. So Holger and Robert, I mean, that's pretty much everything I wanted to share with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, no, I like your complete story, because you start like depressed SAP Basis guy and start to merge in something very creative. And actually, you mentioned, okay, I want to find a way to save my time, to use it something useful, and then actually you present where you're investing your time. I think it's very nice SAP Basis story from ground zero till something what you can do in Azure. I like it. I like your complete story.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So not only the digital transformation of businesses, but also the transformation of Nishan. Starting from an SAP Basis guy and then getting excited about the Power Platform. Actually, I really liked the last demo as well, the Power Platform. And I think maybe just to spend one little word on that, just to recap what you have done there, because I think this is really, really nice. So now with just, and you showed how easy it is to drag a button or something like that, and then to create a user interface. But you had developed a new Power Platform user interface that works on a mobile device, that works in a browser, and so on. And you could actually update data in the SAP system. But then also with just another click, you created a Word document or a PDF document actually out of this that had this latest information from the SAP system that you had just updated. And you didn't even write one single line of code for this. So I thought I just wanted to highlight this again, how beautiful the Power Platform here is. And I obviously very much like what Robert said, starting from a basis guy and now turning into a developer that develops great new applications that are helpful for others. So I think that was a really great story.
Thank you. And being a cloud solution architect, jack of all trades, right? So now you can really expand your basis career already into different areas, like what you said, developer. I mean, it's so easy, right? Using Power Apps, And the optimization potential, just by understanding SAP part, it's even better. So the future is bright.
Perfect.
Cool.
Good. Well, then I think, Nishan, thank you so much. I think that was really a great story, a great personal insight in your journey towards Microsoft and in Microsoft. And I hope that we'll continue working together, that there will be some cool, new, fun projects, and then maybe at a later time we can have you back and where you show us what's the next step in your journey. So from Basis to Power Platform to, I don't know what, let's see what happens next. Cool. With this, thank you very much for joining. I hope to see you next week and then again. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Cheers.